Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with the esteemed Dr. Eric Lopkin and Keith Reynolds, who is joining us again after some technical difficulties last week. Thank you, Keith.
My pleasure. We just have more news to discuss over the week.
I like that as a positive attitude. So really, gentlemen, the theme we had until we were so rudely interrupted is the whole thing about social media and how it's forming opinions. Let's talk about, let's start off with the role of social media in the business world. Just real quick, kind of how important, how it's influenced decision-making. Keith, I'll throw it out to you first. Keith? Yeah, Keith.
Keith, you there?
Yeah. Keith?
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yes. So we're talking about social media in terms of its impact on business, its promise. Has it fallen short? Is it more than what people thought it would be? Maybe let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a glass half full, glass half empty view. Commercially, companies have found social media to be a big tool in the pandemic, right? And the people who are frontline working with customers or finding new customers, have flocked to the platforms. As they work from home and try and meet people, LinkedIn has become a huge part of people selling.
Has it replaced traditional advertising? In other words, you're an advertising agency and you're a company. Is it really at this point more advantageous to your success to be done with the old and go with the new, or is the old still relevant, meaning traditional media?
I think it really depends on who you're marketing to. But I don't have research at my fingertips, but digital advertising has just exploded. I think I read that more than half of advertising now is spent on digital.
That's funny because there was a lapse of people, in other words, advertising agencies, disproportionately spending money on older media, and it's interesting you say that because there's probably been a lag in terms of them coming on board because they're used to the old, like anything else. You're a creature of habit. Dr. Lopkin, can you comment on this?
Yeah, social media has become a cornerstone of business. It's a major part of any business's marketing campaigns, and it's not an either-or with social media and traditional media. Programs have become integrated. So you're seeing commercials that refer back to a social media meme. You're seeing social media campaigns that direct people to a website. And now it's more than just marketing because smaller businesses have been able to sell on Facebook where they couldn't bring people into their stores. They can take orders on Facebook. I know a number of restaurants that you can order through Facebook Messenger. So it's really become integrated in people's businesses.
Yep.
Interesting. It has definitely, certainly been integrated into the business model. I think it's interesting to me that there has been somewhat of a lag. Let's talk about shaping opinions. We've just gotten through a political period of time. Dr. Lopkin, I'll throw it to you. Excuse me. I'll throw it to you first. How impactful has social media been in this latest electoral period of time?
So social media is incredibly impactful because it has taken a hold of people in a way no other media ever has. It's always with you. With television, you used to have to be in the room with a TV. Radio, the same thing. This is on your phone, which most people have with them constantly. And it pushes notifications out. So you're constantly being bombarded by social media. And unfortunately, people have started to believe what's on social media unquestioningly. I have seen people post the most ridiculous information, not just about politics, but things about nutrition, about health. That all it takes is a simple Google search to find out it's wrong. But people don't do the research. They believe whatever their Facebook feed, their Twitter feed tells them.
Interesting concept. Mr. Reynolds' comment on that. I think Dr. Lopkin has a good point. In other words, as long as you're tuned in and committed to a certain social media platform, I believe you have a tendency to believe whatever.
Yeah, and people not only do they not do the research, but they gravitate towards their confirmation bias, right? So if they believe something, they'll tend to seek information that aligns with their views. And when you combine that with a lack of accountability for saying things that are true or not, you see that people take false information and act on it and don't even care to look up whether it's valid or not. And I mean, if you look at the events of this month, it can have terrible consequences.
Yes, let me throw something out, because it's something Dr. Lopkin he came up with it. I mean, it's over 10 years ago, and I'm throwing out to you, Keith, Mr. Reynolds, is that matter if it's legitimate or not, aren't we getting to a point, doesn't social media and media in general, isn't it playing a role in our United States Republic becoming, I don't want to be an alarmist, but it's getting to a point it's almost ungovernable. Like you have factions, liberal, conservative. They're not talking to each other because through social media, through various outlets, you're being fed what you want to hear, and therefore it becomes reality, and you're not listening to the other side. You're not getting the other view. You're just getting, you're substantiating what you already believe. Please comment on that.
Well, in the last time I was on the show, we talked about the fairness doctrine. And when Reagan abolished that, there was a big push by conservative media to implement that policy. Because you had at that point in time, you also had the rise of soon to be Fox News and a whole movement of conservative media
and Rush Limbaugh, that kind of thing.
Yep, and it used to be that if you had a media outlet, you had to provide a view to the other side, and so I think that dropping that has cut people off from being able to see the other side, and so you just get into a channel and subscribe to just what you're going to believe anyways. And
you're eating pasta and you're getting fatter and fatter, aren't you? I think Keith has a great point. Dr. Lopkin, please comment on that. I think it just substantiates your original theory.
Absolutely. We've talked about the echo chamber for 10 years now, and it's just getting worse and worse. And
but
there
now
used
isn't
to
it
be a
becoming
channel.
Dangerous? Dr. Lopkin, could it be dangerous at this point?
Oh, it's absolutely dangerous, because if you don't get an opposing viewpoint, you're not getting the whole story. You're not getting all the facts. You're getting a subset, and that's what's crafting your belief. And since that shows, oh, look, what I believe is correct by this subset of facts, I must be right. And you're not looking at the other side's facts. And truth be told,
I think
it's
that's
dangerous not to get the whole picture.
I agree, and I think it's irresponsible to spread misinformation, and yet people stand on the free speech argument to allow it, and yet it's. I read recently that misinformation is like a plumbing problem, and you have to fix it, and you have to monitor it and maintain your plumbing system. And it's just like crime in society. We don't want crime. Why would we want lies to spread? But not everybody has that opinion.
I actually think, Keith, as our guest, I think first you, then Dr. Lopkin, I think it's really eroded our social fabric. It used to be the liberal and the conservative over Thanksgiving would have a ruckus little discussion, and then they'd go have a couple of bourbons. That's not the case anymore. You have people basically severing friendships, relationships. Mr. Reynolds.
Family. Yeah, family too.
That's pretty dangerous for a fabric of society. It can be comical, it can be funny, I get all that, but overall, you're really basically eroding a structure of society.
Yeah, and another driver of that, so that you have the free speech and the fairness doctrine, and the regulation of commercial activity over media, but you also have excuse me, I just forgot what I was going to say.
Dr. Lopkin, you want to fill in?
Go ahead, Dr. Lopkin. I'll be back with that thought in a moment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely dangerous, and you're starting to see that media that is supposed to be having responsible journalism actually has their best interests elsewhere. And that was illustrated perfectly this week when Joe Biden announced a whole bunch of appointments, and these are all former CNN staffers. So they're not looking to get news out. They're looking to kowtow to the Democratic Party so that they can get jobs.
That's just certainly one aspect of it. It's very interesting. Do we have to take a break, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this message.
To reach the next level,
you
need to operate at peak performance. The key to this is mastering the 7 elements of success. Learn how to master mindset, focus, operations, communications, innovation, evaluation metrics, and continuous improvement. Get the Biznetics way at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and bookstores near you.
And we're back. And remember, you can be part of the conversation by calling us at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693.
Before we got to break, Mr. Reynolds, I'm sure, had a profound thought. Have you recalled?
And now I got it back.
Awesome.
All right.
So on top of the free speech aspect of this and the fairness doctrine and the commercial media side of it, you also now have social platforms that they make money by having people upset, right, and having people anxious, and so you.
Wait! I need to interject something, Keith. Not in a bad way. What you said, Lopkin, you're going to appreciate this. I think that's brilliant. The old model of fairness and there's no cash. Show me the money. The cash is to create agitation, to create conflict. Isn't that the case, Dr. Lopkin?
It is. The social media
if
platforms
your Mother Teresa, you're going bankrupt.
Well, the social media platforms make their money by having people stay on the platform and see the ads. And if you agree with everything that's on the platform or you have a polite discussion, you tend not to stick around. When you're arguing and you're defending your point of view, it's been shown you're actually on the platform longer, seeing more of their ads, so they make more money if you're aggravated.
Mr. Reynolds, comment.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And so, then that gets back to, well, do we want to have our government put some guide rails on things in terms of having valid facts, and or do we want to have that if you're stimulating something that gets out of control, somebody gets hurt, or you have something like happened in Washington, D.C., that there's consequences. Right now we live in a consequence-free environment.
I would agree. It's a consequence-free environment, on both sides. I think that there's money to be made. The ratings, if you're looking at traditional cable, listen, CNN, Fox, they have no vested interest in giving the Walter Cronkite view of reality. It's, he said, she said, and that's what fills their audience. And I think Dr. Lopkin said it 10 years ago. It's kind of dangerous because you're getting fueled what you already believe. And it goes from, here's my point, though. It goes from a minor agitation, and if you're being fed this over and over and over, it can become dangerous. Mr. Reynolds first.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've had this polarization with the rise of Fox News and all the others, creating an alternate reality. And, you're starting to see Fox News moderate a little bit, but other outlets are stepping in to fill the void and push it even further.
Exactly. Dr. Lopkin, your comment. And CNN's done the same on the left side as well.
Both sides, yes.
They went from the arbitrator of fair news to they've done the same thing. So it's no good on either side. Go ahead.
But, we always use Fox, CNN and MSNBC as an examples. But in all fairness, they actually followed. They didn't lead doing this. It was Internet-only sites that actually started this. And I remember back in 2005, I was actually being interviewed for an editorial position for one of these news sites. Fortunately, it's no longer around because during the interview, I was told point blank, their priority was getting news out first. It didn't matter if it was correct. They could correct it later. And that's what started when you had these internet-only news sites, and they got enough traffic that Fox, CNN, and MSNBC started going, all right, we've just got to get news out faster. And they started not fact-checking, not doing the traditional three sources. And it's become this disaster area of phony journalism where if somebody tweets something, all of a sudden, oh, that's a source, we can quote that. No, there's no credibility to that, especially when you don't have corroborating evidence.
I think Dr. Lopkin is an exceptionally good point, Mr. Reynolds.
I was going to say, to a degree, you saw that with for example, the Mueller report, right? There were elements of truth and elements of not mistruth, and some of the news outlets that were covering it were throwing out things that hadn't been validated. They were just said by somebody, and it was treated as news, and it wasn't labeled as unverified, and it I think it cut the credibility of the case itself.
And what was
yes, I would agree with that 100%. Yes.
What was even worse, though, was when they had information they knew was wrong, they let it go through anyway. I was watching CBS this morning, their morning news show. This is a couple of years ago, after the Mueller report came out. When the Mueller report said, there was no evidence that Trump colluded with the Russians, but they didn't make a determination on obstruction of justice. They were interviewing Adam Schiff, and Adam Schiff stated categorically, Trump colluded with the Russians. Now, you had just had the Mueller report come out saying, no, he didn't. Not one person at the table questioned him about that, challenged him about that. They just let it go out as a fact, Trump colluded with the Russians, when the investigation had just shown he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's typical on both sides. I think, Mr. Reynolds, is that Fox, but it's dangerous for our republic.
In
Go
our
ahead.
society, somebody like Adam Schiff can say whatever he wants, but it's up to the news to sort it out, provide the facts or provide the context, and that's what we're missing so much. And that's what Dr. Lopkin kind of said, that instead of saying, wait a second, we're not getting, going to, dig down deep into the Mueller report, but instead of pushing back, at least ask a question. Well, he's just been somewhat quasi-vindicated, blah, 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 no question. Right.
It goes to the other side as well.
Yes, the Fourth Estate is there to question authority. They're not supposed to be they're not supposed to be colluding with politicians on either side. Their job is to ask questions of everybody, question everything, and find the truth. And they don't do that anymore on either side.
Now, I think, and I said, Keith, Mr. Reynolds, that Dr. Lopkin had a great point 10 years ago about cable networks feeding both sides. Talk a little bit, and you're a real expert on social media. I think it's worse now than it's ever been because, with cable, that's almost, Jurassic Park. That's 10 years ago. Now, when you're looking at social media, you're getting people not just having an opinion, but being outraged, resorting to potentially violent actions because they're in the echo chamber, as Dr. Lopkin would say.
Well, and I think you're right.
And they're being fed by their buddies who are just echoing and it's escalating. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I think we may have hit a inflection point because you look at all of the people who have been kicked off the platforms over the last 2 months, leading up to the election, where I think that the social media platforms are seeing the writing on the wall that if they don't figure out a way to stop the what can lead to violence, they become liable, and they're also going to face more regulation. So it's very interesting to see how they've stepped up and changed their behavior in the last 90 days.
Fantastic point, Dr. Lopkin. Isn't it true what Keith is saying that, they know, and it's not because they're nice people, they're looking at their revenue model and they're saying, if this stuff on both sides goes on unchecked, regulations coming down the pike.
Yeah, they're looking to save their businesses. There's definitely going to be the question of regulation. The problem is they're not doing it fairly. Like Twitter, for example, banned Donald Trump, banned a number of conservatives saying they were inciting violence. However, they allowed the hashtag #KillTrump to trend. So they weren't just looking for people who were advocating violence. They were looking for people who were advocating violence on the right. And the big problem is what they did by shutting down those accounts actually made the problem worse because they just validated the idea that they're trying to shut down the voices of this group. And actually last week, Angela Merkel came out and said what the social media platforms did was a bad idea. And when the head of Germany goes, you just made things worse, maybe you should listen because they've been through this.
I think that's a very valid point. You have these people, right or wrong, we're not going to get into that, that are already angry. Their voices get shut down. That fuels the discontent, doesn't it, Mr. Reynolds? Not taking a political view, just as a person.
Yeah, well, I think it's human nature to want to come together and solve and fix problems, and yet there's also the, we also have these deep human instincts that drive us into behaviors and things, and when you mix it up with media, it can be a potent cocktail.
My question is, Mr. Reynolds, are we, from various reasons, social media, the basically polarization of media overall, can we get to a point where we may become something I would never think about in fifth grade, West Hartford, elementary school? Is the United States, could it drift towards becoming ungovernable?
I have a sense that things are going to get better.
Dr. Lopkin.
Unfortunately, I think it is possible. We talked on the Carnivore Bites podcast. I've been talking to people all over the country, and in the center of the country, in the Midwest, in Indiana, and certainly in the South, people are angry. From their point of view, they are looking at a president that stole an election against their best interest. And I've been told gun stores have problems keeping ammo in stock because people are arming because they're afraid the Biden administration is going to pass a massive gun control laws. There is a lack of communication. And if we're not communicating with each other, it's going to get worse. The only hope I believe we have is for people to talk.
Being older than both of you, I remember when Jimmy Carter got elected. Yeah, he ruffled some feathers, but nothing like Dr. Lopkin's talking about. I think 35 years later, I think that's where we are, Keith, is that we are in a situation where we're on a potential powder keg. Is it explode? I don't know. But we gotta navigate through this very judiciously. Do you agree with that?
I agree, and I think that the potential, as you point out, is there that we have the dissolution of our civil society, and it's not like it's the North against the South. It's two cultures at war that live together, and we don't know where that's going to go.
We're really drifting towards Dr. Lopkin comment on Keith's point. We're drifting to two Americas. It's not rich and poor. It's really, left and right, isn't it?
We are drifting apart. I will toss in something that at least I find encouraging. Senators and congressmen from 22 different states, half Democrats and half Republicans, have come together to form a caucus geared towards bringing people together. So we've got people on both sides. And, of course, you do not have folks from the far left involved in this. You do not have the people from the far right. These are centrist representatives who are trying to bring people in. And if they can succeed, it's a huge step forward. But, again, I will point out that they're fighting against the AOCs. They're fighting against the squad. They're fighting against the right wing of the Republican Party. So we've got to come together in the center.
Final thoughts,
I think there's a socioeconomic element of that. You look at the middle class and how our policies have since 1985 or so have really just decimated the middle class. That if we were a little more healthy and there was a strong middle class, you might have not as much angst between different viewpoints.
Fantastically articulated, and actually my little schoolhouse thing is actually started, believe it or not, in the 70s. I'm just saying that it's been going on for quite a while, the basically spiraling down of the middle class, and you are correct with that point. Dr. Lopkin, final point.
We are actually up against it. So, Keith, thank you so much for being with us.
Great show.
You've been listening to Carnivore Radio on Blog Talk Radio. You can catch the replay as well as the Carnivore Bites podcast at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.